Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the Carson City Visitors Bureau Board of Directors meeting for February 13, 2017. Could we have the roll call?
Yes, Jesse Domi. Present. Jonathan Boulware.
Here.
Sandra Nagel. Present. Karen Aboud.
Present.
Renee Plain is absent. We have a quorum.
And could we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. Any public comment? Okay, there won't be any public comment today for sure. For possible action, approval of minutes, January 13, 2017, CCVB board meeting.
I move to approve the minutes of January 23rd, 2017 as presented.
Second.
You keep losing your mic just for the recording.
Oh, sorry.
For some reason, it keeps coming on.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks.
I'm a little rusty. All right, adoption of agenda. Anyone see any changes? All right, we will go ahead and accept the agenda as posted. For possible action, approval of the adjusted CCVB fiscal year 2017 budget report.
Okay, in your packet you will find, once again, the fiscal year 16 CCVB master budget report. This is for accounting period through December 31st for expenses, and revenue is reflected through room tax collections through November 2016. So we'll start on page 2 of 5 in the packet, the revenues. This does represent 50% of the year lapsed. So if going down, you can see that in our revenues alone, we're at 49.9%. Once again, that would be reflective of just room tax revenue through November. So not having one additional month in there, you can see that we're reflective of the 50% of the year. So once again, doing great. Year-to-date actual revenue coming in is $921,227.15 with a budgeted amount of just shy of $1.9 million. Continuing down with the revenue accounts, you can see the breakout for each one. You're once again reflective of 49.9% with the carryover, which would be our expanded expendable revenue, reflecting in at 70.1%. But we're continuing in the same pattern with our increased revenues. No questions on that. I'll go to page 2. This is the start of the expense page. Salaries and wages, coming in at 45.9%. Bottom line with benefits coming in at 43.3%, once again at 50% of the year. Next page, 4 or 5 in your packet, going over the expenses for year-to-date expenses through December. Coming in professional services, once again, we've already covered the highlighted ones in red. Some of these were some heavy upfront costs to include an additional audit report that I'll talk about a little bit later in the meeting, but that'll balance out as we get closer to the end of the year, but that's still at 59.6. We were upwards of 60% of year lapsed in our last meeting. Continuing down with the property services, we're coming in at 33.7%. That's reflective of the equipment repair, maintenance, rent, and also the office equipment, the lease. So that's the lease agreement for the copy machine. Continuing down in other services, you can see a couple of red highlighted areas there. Insurance, once again, that is, we've paid for half of the year at $1,700. We're still going to come in just a little over the $3,000, but we won't augment those until we change our augmentations later in May. But bottom line, still in other services, which include special events, printing and advertising, trade shows, golf projects, dues memberships, and the bus passes, we're coming in at 26% at 50% year lap. The operating supplies coming in at 41.2%. Bottom line, with utilities, we're coming in at 35.3%, all expenses at 50% of the year. And the back page is the worksheet for taxation. Any questions?
So when you say we're at 35.3%, I get that, but does that mean we're on pace for hitting the budget number, or how do you know, or how do we know how we're pacing?
Yeah, when we look at them, we do a year-in budget. So if you look at the projections, our projections are going to change. That's the second column once we get into May. We will change some of those. Some of them are going to have to go up a little bit. You can see some of those highlighted areas. That's where we're pacing, where we're going to go over our budgeted numbers. Most of them, we're actually coming in lower. Now, when I do my projections or my augmentation changes in May, because we're bringing in more revenue, we are going to change some of these line items. So, for instance, on special events, you can see that we've only spent 26% of what we budgeted, and we're at 50% of the year lapse. Now, some will be heavy in, say, May, June, when we have Epic Rides and some of the other events. So I know that those are going to come in closer to the budgeted amount of 146. When we get closer to June, we'll either decide to augment back, knowing that we're not going to spend everything that we've budgeted, or we'll augment forward with some of the additional revenue. So some of these are going to be subject to change, first in May, and then secondly in June when we come back for the final augmentation. For me, it just shows that we're tracking in the positive, where we're not spending as much money as we typically would at this point of the year, 50% of the year. Yeah.
Joel, I have a question. I see most of our projections are very close to our budget, most line items. But, it's a small change in like RTC bus passes that we sell. Like we have budgeted 42, but how did we move it so low to only 1,000? What was the reason?
Yeah, we ended up closing the store, so we've passed on that, the bus sales. So we had spent $1,083.75 on the bus passes. When we went into the agreement with the Nevada Day store to take on the retail component, we went ahead and passed on that responsibility to the Nevada Day store. So we brought that back down to exactly what we've spent. Now, yeah. The store inventory, if you go down, you can see those are the only two that's changed. We also did change the store inventory. We budgeted $30,000. Year to date, we had spent $10,601. So we did change that because that'll be the final number, not only in May, but also in June when we do our augmentation.
So next year, those items will not be on our report anymore.
You are
because
correct.
We're not going to be doing
They'll be
it.
zeroed out. Yeah.
Any questions from the board about the budget? No, okay.
Move to approve the adjusted financial year 17 budget report as presented through December 2016.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you. Possible action, approval for ratification of the CCVB Statement of Accounts Payable Checks and P-card reports for December 2016.
All right, we'll start in your packet with page 2 of the accounts payable checks. This is the funds 740 through 742. The top item, the $7,722.69, you can see reflects a payment for the credit card charges we went over last month. Those are reflective of November 5th through December 4th for the CCVB credit card charges. This is reflective of 12/1 through 12/31 for the rest of the expenses. Going down, we'll go over some of the highlighted ones. You can see our standard rent came in at the $4,729. You've got actually four straight items that are above that $1,000 that we make sure we highlight during this meeting, but those are all for independent contractors. We're working on all of our grants projects, and I'm thinking that next month will be a good time to come back and do an update of where we're at with some of the new videos, some of the new printed collateral. We also have some upfront costs for some of the special events we're working on. I know that Kat Allison and her team with Nevada Photo Source is pretty heavy in creating the marketing pieces for the Rockabilly Riot, helping with the new production of the Epic Rides promotion. So there's quite a bit of upfront work, even though we're paying for it now. It's for special events later in the year. Continuing down past those, I think the next one to highlight would be the new office addition. So we did add, as I think all of you are aware, we did expand to having Nevada Day store take over the retail component. With that, we built an office space. Although we spent $2,850, we did have a donation that came in from the owners of the building for that construction of $2,500. So it cost us just a little bit more than what the donation came in. The fundraiser tickets sold in the visitor center, the next line item, $2,715. This is a cash in, cash out. That's our participation in helping out with the ticket sales for the Holiday with a Hero. Continuing down, the next one, there's the lodging tax payment, and I know we talked about that would be reflected in this one. We made our first payment to Nevada Commission on Tourism of $23,724.04. And going down, I think the last one, there's just an $800 purchase, $875.71 for brochures and paper. And once again, those are, you'll see those balance out when we report on some of the grant funding. Most of those are for grant projects and the printing related to them. So continuing on to the credit card, the P-card report. And these are P-card between, let's see here, it looks like 12/3 and January 4th. So this one's extended out just a little bit longer than the first report. Going down, looks like the first one would be the $3,312 payment. This is almost going on a year, but we were finally invoiced for all of the rooms that we agreed to pay for when we took down the city staff to look at the logistics for the Epic Rides event in Prescott. I think we ended up with a couple from fire, a couple from sheriff's office, public works. Well worth our investment in having them go down, as you could tell in the logistics behind the event in Carson City. Continuing down, a couple of $100, $300, really nothing out. You've got, we changed the keyed office entry for some new locks. We ended up going with some new locks for all of the files that are stored in Chris's office when we brought in the Nevada Day store. So we had to change out some locks on that. That's the $556.66. Outside of that, I think they're all pretty small, just standard monthly. Going to the final page, 2 of 2 of that report. Looks like going down halfway through the page, you'll see the printer rental of $1151.22, and then the additional overage charges for the extra printing of $1564.01. Now, I will talk about this in my director's report. I'm looking at a new piece of equipment, and actually it'll increase the quality and what we can offer in our printing and should substantially decrease the cost that we're paying on our monthly bills right now and take away some of those overages. Next one is the standard, the payment for the app, the $991.67, and I think the others are just standard monthly. So, any question on those? And I would note that at last month we had a request to look into possible savings with our fax line, and we were able to actually reduce our monthly payment substantially. Looked into it, and we not only have a new fax line, but also have the opportunity of having charter TV in our conference room if ever needed for anybody that's using the conference room, so I appreciate that.
Any more questions from the board? All right.
I move to approve the ratification of the CCVB account activity statement of accounts payable checks and P-card reports for December of 2016.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you. Possible action approval for the CCVB to apply a refund to the Carson Tahoe Motel for their overpayment of room tax associated with comps and package deals from May 1, 2013 to May 31, 2015.
All right, so first I want to thank not only the board, but also the Carson Tahoe Hotel, formerly the City Center, for their patience in this manner. We've been looking into this now going on a little over a year and a half. And I know that we made the decision last year to move forward in possibly processing any overpayment in a credit towards the property, that it would take a third-party audit, of which we did conduct. We've put into our current fiscal year 17 budget $10,000, and that's to pay for not only this audit, but an audit of 2 other casino properties to make sure that we are across the board dealing with comps consistently. We'll go back through the other 2 audits that'll be performed in the next month or 2. We'll look at all 3 properties. If we need to address how comps are being handled in accordance to packages with gaming properties in our policies and procedures, we'll bring that back to the board. But I wanted to bring the findings. I have not included the actual audit report because I think some of the information may be deemed confidential, but I wanted to bring the findings. So when we initially started this process, there was a substantial request for overpayment. We hired Cohen & Company because they're familiar with the policies and procedures of the Visitors Bureau and how we collect room tax. They did conduct an audit of the property. The findings of that audit was that there was an overpayment in room tax of 9,000, let's see, I want to make sure that we have 9,585.57. There was an underpayment from the initial request from the property of 4,387.11 associated with payments with golf packages. So ultimately, the initial request was higher. We are going to tonight move forward with approval of a refund of $9,585.57 based on the Cohen & Company's audit of the property for their overpayment. This overpayment reflects an overpayment from May of 2013 through May of 2015. And they are now, according to our current policies and procedures, in compliance and paying, which I think will show to be consistent with the other properties, but we won't know that until we do the audit of the other 2 properties. The way that I would prefer to apply this credit, in talking also with Cohen & Company and the property, would be to provide a credit for their January payment, and if need be, a portion of that carried over to their February payment for the property. So, any questions that I can answer on it? I think we're all pretty familiar with what we are looking at in the process that they're followed.
Oh, any questions? Do a motion?
I move to approve the CCVB refund of $9,585.57 to the Carson Tahoe Hotel, formerly City Center, by applying the refund as a credit towards the property's January and February 2017 room tax payment.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you. For discussion only, discussion of the CCVB's collaborative project Reimagined Space.
So give you a little bit of background on the project. In November, I found that the RAC, the Redevelopment Citizens Committee, was looking for potential projects with some unfunded projects or money that had been left over not only in their current budget, but also prioritizing some projects for their fiscal year 17. And I went under public comment first to show some support towards the purchase of a daytime projector, and I think we talked about that last month and some of those uses. You know, whether that's funded or not, I think maybe we could come back and look at that use for special events. But I did put out a proposal of a vacant storefront redevelopment project, and it would be a collaborative project with the Citizens Committee, Redevelopment, the Visitors Bureau, and our arts community to put in temporary art exhibits and/or performance art in vacant storefronts throughout the redevelopment area. I did go back on February 6th and go through what I'm going to show you now as a PowerPoint presentation, just to make sure everyone was comfortable of what we were looking at for funding coming from redevelopment, how we would match that funding coming from the Visitors Bureau. I'm not taking the money from the Arts and Culture program because I'm proposing this as a redevelopment project. This is a project that I think will have an impact on the overall visitor experience. I think we've become blind to some of those vacant storefronts in our community because we walk by them, we drive by them, but our visitors are not. When they come down and they're experiencing our downtown or experiencing the south end of town in the redevelopment area, they'll see these storefronts that we would title as blighted that are empty and vacant. So the PowerPoint that I presented in front of the RAC on the 6th was showing some comparisons to a couple that you'll see, a couple of different projects, one in Seattle, one in Twin Cities, and also a couple in New York. I think that it was received well based on the prioritization that it received from the RAC committee. They ended up collectively across the board, I think 3 or 4 of the members rated it as their second priority in funding, and it is going to now go as the top suggestion to the Board of Supervisors to be funded from remaining money from fiscal year 16, and it would be a one-shot money, and we would come back and look at it as future funding for fiscal year 17 through RAC next year. So I'll go through the PowerPoint, and then we'll kind of talk about the project. So the project's going to be branded Reimagined Space. This is one of the projects. You can see a storefront that was presented as a collaborative project. This collaboration was initially started through a chamber, through a bid district, a business improvement district, and also an arts organization. It's continued to be run by an arts organization. A couple of quotes, I'll just kind of run through them. I didn't go through them, every one of them, but you have a handout so you can see. But it talks about the importance of what this redevelopment project will do for a vacant storefront, what it does for surrounding businesses, what it does to create a vibrant walking downtown project. We're looking at, if the funding comes through the Board of Supervisors in March, I would like to shoot for having 1 or 2 of these open for either the wine walk in April and no later than the May wine walk. So, quote from the public art director that did the Twin Cities in Minnesota: arts and storefronts aim to work with neighborhood organizations, artists, and local businesses in an effort to promote creativity, revitalize local economies, and provide everyone with equal and open access to art. A couple quotes from artists. Once again, this is another example of one of the vacant storefronts that they've put together. Vacancy rates were climbing, and often vacancy leads to more vacancy. We thought that drawing attention to the opportunities that those vacant spaces offer for temporary uses could have a positive impact on the surrounding businesses. You have 38 reasons to go window shopping in downtown Minneapolis, and it will cost you nothing. This came from Fox News, and as I stated with the redevelopment, these projects, one thing they have in common, although they're funded a little differently in some communities, they're ran differently, but they all attract media. Media loves these projects. Another example of Seattle, they started theirs in late 2010 as an experiment in activating vacant spaces with art and performance, ultimately revitalizing neighborhoods. Seattle, the storefront Seattle leases space from the neighborhood property owners for the nominal rate of $1 per month. This is how they were able to get through some of those requirements for insurance, eliminating some of the liability through a simple release of liability with participants. At full integration into the neighborhood storefront, Seattle is programming up to 60 art installations per year into vacant spaces. That's enough to instantly turn any neighborhood into a walking destination, any arts and culture destination, and a shopping destination. A couple examples of some of those additional spaces. A couple of quotes here. I won't go through them all. Storefront Seattle, you can see another one of them. There's another vacant storefront that turned into a temporary exhibit. This is one of the New York Smart Spaces projects, and I think the No Longer Empty, this is one that Mark touched on because he's actually done some work with these organizations in New York creating some storefront exhibits. I like the fact that the No Longer Empty out of New York, they're the ones that really stretch the envelope and have some performance arts. They'll have poetry readings. You know, I had a chance right before I presented to the RAC to talk to one of our business owners who owns one of the major properties, one of the old casinos that's shut down in downtown, and it's a perfect blank canvas for a performing arts exhibit. And this could be done during a wine walk. You work with Western Nevada Performing Arts. They come in, they get to advertise what they're coming, an up-and-coming performance, and you bring in a few hundred people. Would also be working with the property owner to show the property, the vacant property. So you can see how collaboratively this works for everyone involved. Another one of the exhibits there.
Joel, I would
Yes.
mention too, just because I've heard comments from folks here for the legislature that, they see some vacant storefronts, it's troubling. It is troubling, but nonetheless, we know they'll ultimately be filled. But I think trying to get this happening before legislature concludes for the year would be vital.
I agree. I think having an opportunity to have 2 or 3 of these, although it's going to extend throughout the entire redevelopment area, so that'll go all the way up to the shopping centers on the south side of Carson, I think the most impactful would be having a few of those first projects being right downtown. That leads into the overall experience for a lot of the major events we're bringing in. We're looking at trying to have a couple of our bike rack projects installed before Epic Rides. Love to shoot to have all of those vacant storefronts done the same.
How many vacant how much, the funding covers how much of the storefronts? I don't know how many are available, but
There's several.
artists.
I have to say, when I started putting together, you'll see some photos of just a few of those. I was only able in one evening to get pictures of some of those downtown, a couple on Curry and a couple on the south side. Now, the redevelopment area does stop, I think, just above Corbett Street. The hopes would be that then some of those property owners that have some blighted property or some vacant storefronts north of that would follow out or reach up. And although I wouldn't be able to expend the matching funds coming from redevelopment, I think it would be advantageous for us to work with those properties and put them in contact with the artists that we're working with. So I think that'll become contagious. But I think it's easy to say that although there's only, I believe only a 5% vacancy rate for the downtown properties, I think that's a little higher throughout the rest of the redevelopment area. So you're looking at a dozen plus vacant storefronts that we'll be able to work with. I have to say there's some that are occupied that could use some help. I think some of those that are occupied only maybe 3 to 4 months during the legislative session, we need to work with the property owners and see if we could do something with their window storefronts during the other 20 months of the 2 years that they're not here. So the reimagined space, you can see that collaborative project bringing community together to address blight throughout Carson City's redevelopment areas. I made sure that consistently we were pushing that this is a collaborative project, that they would be coming in with whatever funds they were providing, that we would look at matching those same funds. You can see here that you're talking about some storefronts that are outside of downtown. I did reach out and talked with Sean from the Carrington Company with the mall. They have 2 storefronts that not only have exposure to the inside of the mall, but have exposure on the outside. So you're talking about a dual impact if you were able to get a performing arts temporary exhibit and or some 2 to 3 dimensional pieces in the windows. Collaborative project, benefits spreading throughout the redevelopment area. A project where property owners and managers get free positive attention for their location. You can see how impactful some of these, although they're small, you're engaging artists that typically haven't had an opportunity to be a part of maybe a community project, not only showcasing their work, but making a difference within the community that they live. This is one of those that I talked about that has a visual impact not only outside of the mall, but inside the mall at the Carson Mall. This is one of those spaces that you'd have the hopes of having that impact reach outside of the redevelopment area. Had to throw in just a little tag I saw in one of those. So now on to the funding. I had asked RAC for their partnership to fund $10,000, and what that $10,000 would fund would be the equipment. This was a line item that they had $20,000 left for fiscal year 16. I knew that if we wanted to make an immediate impact, we needed to try to tap into money that was left over in their current budget, and that was going to be asking for funding for equipment. So the equipment we were looking at was some lights. So those lights could be anything from spotlights, track lighting, even some artistic lights on the bottom right that would be made by local artists. Some of these would have to be battery operated for those spaces that we wouldn't have the electricity. In addition to that, we would need funding from simply art easels all the way to hardware to mount it, to buying some drapes that could be used for special events also. We've obviously had some call for some of these outside of it. If you had a chance to attend the opening night for the LCB for Carson City, Story County, you know, we had some easels and some artwork that we brought in to work with Nick Morano in the city, and I think it was pretty impactful. We would source a lot of the product locally. I, for one, have used a lot of reclaimed pallets and wood and pipe for art pieces that I've done, not only for myself but others. So I think we would do the same. There's some artists locally that may not be able to contribute with a painting, but they certainly could contribute in using some recycled product to create the backdrops for these art pieces. So gave them a few samples of what those pieces could look like that they would be funding. There was a question as far as who would own this equipment, who would maintain the equipment. I did offer that, you know, we obviously have the storage. We have 3,000 square feet of storage space that we store everything from special events, props, to the willies, to trailers, to printed collateral. We would have the space to be able to store these because they would be repurposed and reused not only for this project but also for special events. There was a concern on the rack as far as giving $10,000 in equipment that would become owned by the Visitors Bureau. That, I think, will be addressed when it goes back in front of the Board of Supervisors. If the Board of Supervisors is comfortable in the collaborative project of having that $10,000 in equipment being gifted to the Visitors Bureau and then we maintain that equipment, I think that's probably the best way to go. But if the city wants to maintain ownership and we then take the storage and maintenance of it, I don't have a concern with that either. So. Now, our partnership, I did say that we would match whatever rack. They did dedicate $10,000, so I'll find $10,000 within our current year budget. You'll see this come back when we look at our May augmentations. We're certainly tracking much higher with our room revenue right now, and I think this is a good use of tapping into some of those funds. So we will use our $10,000. We'll provide what we do best, and that's the marketing component. We'll create not only the online presence for marketing, but any printed collateral that would be required. I think one of the directions would certainly be increasing the printed collateral and having this as a walking opportunity outside of even those wine walks like I mentioned. We will broker those agreements with the property owners. If there's any required expense with the insurance, we'll take care of that side. We'll also do the commissioning and decommissioning of all of the artwork, including the stipends. These artists will be paid for their work. So we'll take care of the stipends with the artists out of our side of the $10,000. The partnership with the Cultural Commission, one of the concerns and suggestions when I first presented this back in November was asking the Cultural Commission for money. The Cultural Commission currently receives 40% of the funding that goes through the Citizens Committee for special events, and my understanding is that the RAC passed on that 40% because that's how many of the special event requests for grant money was coming in tied to arts and culture. That's not what this money's for. The money that's going through the RAC or through the Cultural Commission right now is allocated to special events for arts and culture. This is a redevelopment project, but we will be asking on March 13th for the Cultural Commission to take care of the volunteer management, and that's not a small task. That's certainly going to be pretty tasking for them. I've also asked the RAC. I want them to get their feet wet, get their hands dirty. I want them to be on some of the sub-panels for during the artwork that'll come in. Also, hopefully, some of them have the skill set to help us build the sets in each one of these storefronts. So I wanted to make sure I brought that to you and you knew that what direction we were going. I know we've talked about it in a couple of meetings, and I'm happy to say that we're moving forward now, and it looks like one more step to get the funding through the Board of Supervisors, which I think will take place in their first meeting in March. Okay. Any questions on it? Okay. I think it's a great project. I think
Yeah,
once
that's what I'd say.
it mirrors exactly what our mayor, Bob Kroll, talked about in his State of the City speech. He talked about this community getting through the hard times that we did with the downturn of the economy because we collaborated, we worked hand in hand, and that's what we're going to do continuing into this project. So. And I know that one was for discussion only, And I think the next is our non-action items for my executive director's report. So we'll go over, as we do, first in the director's report is our occupancy report, our transient lodging report for December 2016. In your packets, you will find the December 16th report, going over first room tax revenue with a comparison to 2015. This, once again, is for December of 2016. And you're looking at the top 5 properties, saw an increase of 3.5%, which they were up 26,506 over collections in 2015, coming in at 778,832.92. Top 13 properties saw an increase of 7.2%, coming in at just shy of 1.2 million. Remaining properties, once again, saw a decrease. We've seen that pretty consistent. Although we're increasing across the board, our remaining properties continue to go down. The total room tax collection for December came in at 1.2 million. That's up from 1.14 in 2015, an increase of 76,355.74, reflecting an increase of 6.67% for December. That's up from 916,248.27 in 2014. Average daily rate, once again, across the board, there was an increase for the top 5 properties of $2.18, coming in at $91.60. An increase of 81 cents for the top 13 properties, coming in at $67.99, and the RVs coming in at $5 lower than where they were at in 2015, coming in at $26.18. Room revenue comparisons for calendar year and fiscal year to date. For calendar year 2016 versus 15, there was an increase of 3.82%, That's an increase of $613,820 over 2015. And calendar or fiscal year to date, so this would be July through June, an increase of 9.57%. That's an increase of $848,524.10. Comparison between 15 and 14, you'll see just below that, and a comparison of 16 and 14 just below that, showing an increase of 14.47% above calendar year 2014, and an increase of 19.57% over fiscal year. On the right-hand side, you'll see the trailing 12 coming in at 3.82% above 2015 and 14.47% above 2014. The bottom graph, you'll see RevPAR coming in at an increase of 4.6% over the same for the top 5 properties. For top 13 properties, an increase 11.1%, coming in at $35.99 revenue per available room. Bottom line, for all properties, we saw an increase of $3.12 above 2015. That's an increase of 11.9%, coming in at $29.34 revenue per available room. On the back side, you'll see our occupancy report. Top 5 properties came in at 55.3%. Top 13 properties at 52.9%. All properties, including remaining NRV, came in at 43.83%, and that's up from 40.2% from 2015 December. Any questions?
For some reason, I have a different report than you have.
You know what? We made one change. I know you picked up your packet early.
Oh, yeah, that's why.
Yeah, and so you do have another one there that I put in front of you. So there was a couple of changes. We did have an additional property come in and make a payment after you picked up your information on Friday. So I did make the changes to make sure we were up to date. So once again, you can see that we're continuing to see increases. Looking forward to see where we're at, for January, February, and March with the LCB kicking in. Reflectively going back, we've always seen increases of an additional 6% in the months where we have our legislative session in place. Moving on, a couple of just updates for you. I wanted to update you on the interlocal agreement. I know that we're getting a little closer on the interlocal agreement. I think we'll have something to bring back to you at our next meeting. I believe that most of the city departments have looked at their portion of that interlocal agreement, and I know that the DA's office is looking at the legalese on it, making sure that we're in compliance with city and state laws. So I'll bring that back hopefully by next month. I did move forward in good faith, knowing that we're going to reach an agreement or have an interlocal agreement that we both agree with, and we are increasing from the 0.75% that we had for 2015-16, increasing it to the 1% that we talked about for 16-17, and we will process that payment with the city so that they have the money to go over and take care of those direct costs associated with the interlocal agreement. Update on the strategic plan. I do have a draft over with Tara to now apply a little bit of the artistic spin to the strategic plan, and that'll also come back to you at the March meeting. An update on the artistic bike rack project. We have met with Muscle Powered, and I'm going to there's not a lot to move on. I think Mark may touch on this a little bit as far as where we're at. Once again, we're using the Artistic Bike Rack project to help us as a city and as the Visitor Bureau define the policies and procedures and best common practices, because this project really encompasses everything that we'll do in a public art project. And looking forward to moving that forward quickly with the hopes of making sure that we have one or two of these in place for Epic Rides in June. Mark will also touch on, we both had an opportunity to go up with WNC, with Lupe Romero's, and talk with the Latino Students Organization, and actually had a pretty quick response in trying to get the Students Organization, WNC, involved, actively involved in some community projects. Had a chance to attend, although I did not testify, at the NCOT Travel Nevada LCB budget hearing, the pre-legislative hearing. No real changes in that other than the fact that there is a proposal of a little over $5 million to go to the start of the preservation of the Stewart Indian School, which will have a tremendous impact on visitors in Carson City and help us diversify our offerings. So I'm very excited about seeing that progress through the legislature. I did attend the Nevada Commission on Tourism's marketing meeting last month, and although we're always up to date on what Nevada Commission on Tourism is doing within their marketing campaigns, this meeting in particular was showcasing some of the changes for cultural tourism and a couple of proposed projects that they're going to take to their meeting next week for funding. And when they're funding, we're talking about anywhere from $1 million to $5 million project. And they were addressing the need for diversifying and showcasing the cultural tourism aspects of the entire state. So we certainly were of interest of where they were going. You know, one of the proposals, I have to say, I as just a member of the audience, I was kind of shocked because there was a proposal that came in talking about the integration of augmented reality, the integration of storytelling into marketing, and it was kind of reassuring that we're going in the right directions because these are things we've done for 2 years now. So their marketing firm that they're currently working with it's almost a mirror of what we're putting together, what we showcased in our most current visitors guide. So it was nice not only to have Nevada Commission on Tourism, their executive director, Claudia Vecchio, she not only mentioned Carson City and the direction that we've gone in our marketing effort in their hearing in front of LCB, but she also mentioned the strides that we've made in marketing for the rest of the state in rural communities during their marketing meeting. So look forward to seeing what they approve in their meeting next week, and we once again will work hand in hand, Kyle will, with Travel Nevada in their marketing projects. And I think Kyle will expand on that a little bit. He attended a couple of different events in the last month. So this last weekend, I did have an opportunity to go down and meet with a collective art group out of Sacramento. It's the M5. They've done 2 projects now, and it really ties to the Reimagined Space project. The first project that this collaborative art group did in Sacramento was taking a vacant hotel and turning it into a temporary art exhibit, and it was spectacular. It was an amazing piece. It far exceeded any of their expectations as far as attendance. In fact, many were turned away, and it was open for an entire month. Now, I have to say that the overall win of that project turned into yet their newest one, which is Art Street. It is a 65,000 square foot vacant storefront just off of Midtown in Sacramento. They have over 100 artists that participated in this temporary exhibit. It's going to be shown just through February. And once again, I have to tell you, sitting down with the artists and talking about some of the successes that they've had and the challenges that they've faced, they were shocked that I was there representing the Visitors Bureau, representing an arts and culture movement that has dedicated funding, because that's their biggest struggle. Their biggest struggle is getting the city, getting their Visitors Bureau, getting their Chamber of Commerce, getting anyone to help fund and see the impact that the art has on the overall experience and the overall economics of their entire community. So knowing that we've already met that challenge, and now we're moving forward with just some of these same projects, it's reassuring once again that we're certainly heading in the right direction. This was an incredible project. If anyone has a chance to go down before the end of February to see it, you're talking about visual arts, performing arts. They had interactive art pieces. You're walking through and you're painting people that become a blank canvas. It was a great experience. They do have a few challenges that I think we'll see the same thing in dealing with insurance requirements and also some lease agreements that they've had to work with. So it was a great trip down. Also had an opportunity during that to go down through Nevada City, Grass Valley, look at some of their vacant storefront art projects. Some of them have been successful. I was told in the DBA meeting that there was a great project in Grass Valley to look at that they put in a lot of vacant storefront temporary exhibits. And I can say there's only one currently. So I would say that they were successful in getting tenants into these vacant storefronts. The one happened to be this weekend that they were doing their form of a wine walk, and they do a chocolate walk leading up to Valentine's Day. And this vacant storefront had 6 different artists that were working, showcasing their art and allowing people to come through and be a part of that. So it was kind of like what we talked about maybe with the vacant casino property downtown that we could do. Now, had an opportunity also, not wanting to waste gas money and time, I went to every mountain bike store that you could see from Nevada City to Grass Valley to Sacramento, up 50 to the point where 50 was closed and heading back over. So every mountain bike store has an Epic Rides flyer. I can tell you that before they have a chance to register, it's probably going to be full. So our efforts is more to create an awareness of the event so that we can have this same track record of success in the registration for year 3, 4, and 5 when we get to 2,000 riders. This compared to last year going to all of these same mountain bike stores and promoting it, everyone was familiar with the race this year. So that being said, I think now if there's no questions of me, I'll go ahead and
I do have a question,
Yeah.
Joel. I was looking at the new report, and looks like it was a top 13 property that you added. The room revenue that increased is 31,000, and the room tax that increased is 22,000. Something is not right.
yeah, I'll go back and look at what the change was compared to what we had last year. I'll track the changes, and I'll make sure what it was and make note of it at next month's meeting.
Yeah, because the top 5 increase is only 3.5% year over year, and top 13 increase is 7.2%. So that's, more than double. So it means something is not right there. Yeah.
I'll double check it for you. So as far as the grants update, once again, I'll bring back a grants update at the next meeting for you. And I'll go ahead and pass it on now to Kyle to do a marketing update.
Cool. Thank you, Joel. So I've been gone for the last 7 days, running around all over California advocating for Carson City. To begin with, I went down to the Levitt AMP convening in Los Angeles with Gina Hill from the Brewery Arts Center. But it was a collective of all the communities around the country that got that grant to put on the live music series like we did last year. We were a second-year recipient. The nice thing was last year I was the only representative from a visitors bureau from any of the communities that went down there. And this year there was three other communities. So there was 4 communities total where there was a visitors bureau representative with the local arts organization. So it really shows, the impact that the concert series has, not just on local, but, recognizing the impact regionally. And it was really nice to be down there in kind of this inspirational setting where you're learning how to book shows better, deal with talent better, do all of that. But really it was nice to talk shop with other good people that are doing similar-minded stuff in their communities. I do have to mirror Joel's comment. We're way ahead of the curve. We're way ahead of the curve, and so from an advocacy level, all of the communities from East Coast to, the only one other community on the West Coast that won this grant, which is Santa Fe, which is regarded as an excellent art community. Everybody was really impressed with what we're putting into place, how, we're supporting the arts and how we're bringing community together through the arts. So that was really good. I got to go down to the Arts District in downtown Los Angeles, and that was absolutely awesome. Spoke with their director of their local or regional or neighborhood arts organization and got a lot of good ideas from them. So it was just nice to be in a place where tourism and arts was together and just reinforcing that we're on the right track. After that, I flew up to Santa Clara. James Solano and I went to the Santa Clara Travel and Adventure Trade Show. We were sharing a booth with Carson Valley. And so, we had talked about this before going down there. This may be the very last trade show that we do. It's hard to see the benefit, especially in a consumer show. I will say of all the trade shows I've been to, this was by far the best one, and the one where I left really feeling like we had an impact. Mainly, it was a consumer show, but there was also press, media, travel agents that came through, and so that's where I put my focus was talking with them, trying to set up some relationships where there could be some storytelling in the future, some articles, some press releases, things like that, as well as people who bring groups. And still, believe it or not, there's a lot of people down in the Bay Area that are not familiar with our product, and so it was really nice to, again, advocate for where we've come, in the last 2 years, let alone 4, let alone, in the 20 to 40 years, some of these people have not been to Carson City. The visitor's guide cover made a huge impact. The fact that there were stories and narratives inside of it meant that not only were people grabbing the 2017 Visitor's Guide, they were also grabbing the 2016 Visitor's Guide, and they were also grabbing the Art Walk Guide. So those were the most popular things that we had on the table. Our story meshed very well with Carson Valley, so we kind of had a broader narrative for why people would want to come over to the region. But I would say, when we're surrounded by places like Fiji and Taiwan and all these places where people really have to put a year's worth of planning and effort into making it overseas to visit these places, we really stood out because it was an easy weekend trip that people were not familiar with. And when I started talking about the renaissance that not just Carson City but Northern Nevada as a whole is going through, you could see the excitement in their eyes, particularly from the press. Of being like, okay, we're going to call because I want to tell this story and I want to get up here, I want to do this. So, I would say it was very well attended and it was the right people. So I feel like, there was a really positive impact for being down there. And I'll say James is a rock star talking to people. So while I was dealing with the press and the media, he was dealing with the consumers and we had everybody covered. As for a website update, is still doing kind of revamping of design of pages, working on the history page right now, like we talked about last time, to make room for the new stories that are coming with the David Toll partnership. But where we're going with the history page is removing a lot of duplicate content right now, and then any content that is kind of unnecessary from a Visitors Bureau standpoint, we're replacing the narrative with links to more expert content. So that would be the museum, and other partners who deal specifically with history. So again, showcasing our partners more than, trying to tell the narrative ourselves, but directing people to that content. Just revamped the design on the photography page. Reason being is the spring newsletter is going to be very photography heavy. So we're going to really showcase our photographers, places where you can get good photographs, and the spring newsletter is going to have that photography element to it, a focus on photography. So the page looks really good, and then of course the calendar, it just keeps growing and growing every day. There's more and more events people are really utilizing now, entering events in themselves, but those new widgets to draw all the events off of other people's calendars and Facebook pages are working. So that's really, really nice update from there. The newsletter that we sent out, the winter newsletter, was the most popular one that we've done yet in the 4 years of sending out newsletters. And so we got just under a 20% open rate, which is about 4% higher than the industry average and was about 2% higher than any of our other more successful ones. So that was nice, and a 2% click-through rate. It was focused on the arts and outdoors. So it was announcing the Great Basin Native Artist exhibit and Melissa Malero. It was introducing Mark to the community, and then it also had the snowshoe article and the fat tire bike article from the visitor's guide. So really successful newsletter. I'm assuming with the new look of it and the same great content that the spring's going to be just as successful. A grants update. I'll just focus on the one that I've kind of been mostly involved in, and that would be the interactive map for the trails and the outdoor recreation. So we did purchase the GoPros. They are out in the hands of our influencers, and content is being created for that. But we did sit down and talk with Eric Ingbar of Noman Maps, and so he's a local map maker who's been working with Muscle Power to do the printed map, and we were able to have a good meeting and realize that what we were thinking of is very much possible in regards to taking what the Muscle Power trail map looks like and using that as a layer on top of a citywide map that would also include points of interest and routes to get to those points of interest, in addition to the routes being interactive. So we can, we're moving forward with adding stories, links, videos, pictures, all of that, and it doesn't seem like there's any limitation to what we can actually do. So the interactive trail map is we had a good, promising, exciting meeting. So that's moving forward, and we look to have that ready to go by Epic Rides in June. So events-wise, March 10th through 12th is kind of our next big weekend sporting events. So we've got the swim meet, and we also have the wrestling championships, where it looks like the wrestling meet is going to have just about 1,000 wrestlers coming in. So that keeps growing. So that's looking good, and then also starting to work with the Outlaw Flat Track promoter to do a women's Outlaw Flat Track event in addition to the men's one. So those are the events that we're working on. Also working with the fair, focusing mostly on the entertainment. So, meeting with Lindsay periodically and, really trying to figure out what budget's going to be and scheduling and things like that, because there are other events that are going on. So we're looking to complement, the entire summer event schedule as best as possible with the entertainment. As for social, it's still moving forward. Nothing too noteworthy. I gave a pretty good social report last time of how much we've improved over the last little while. So social's still moving good, but in regards to the newest marketing campaign, it's going to be with Travel Nevada. It's a cooperative marketing campaign that is focused on the Chinese traveler. And so this year has been designated as the year of the Chinese traveler. So instead of doing our old cooperative effort, which was a newsletter insert where we got leads, what we're doing with Travel Nevada now is doing a Chinese-specific insert where we contribute the content, they translate it, it gets sent to 7 different domestic Chinese markets, so not just San Francisco and Los Angeles, but Chicago, New York, all these places where there's heavy Chinese influence. translating it, and then we're also getting a translated page on the Travel Nevada website that all of their marketing directs people back to this Chinese translated page. So Carson City will have its own page, its own content, photographs, everything, and we can trust that the translation is going to be proper and respectful and the way it should be to attract those travelers. So that's what we've been up to in the last month.
Kyle, I have one question. At our last meeting, you talked about there were some glitches with the app, and were you able to get those worked out?
We are still working on that, so I'm looking forward to letting you know when that's taken care of.
Before we move on to Mark, I want to add there's, and actually Kyle hasn't been brought into the circle yet. Today, I started working with another event promoter that is, I've supplied video content, photos, and they're looking at the MAC, and they signed a contract, and it's the event promoter we've worked with for 19 years, All World Sports. They've signed a contract with AAU Basketball to be the premier tournament organization for youth basketball on the West Coast. And they're looking at starting with possibly 2 weekends a month in the MAC for youth basketball tournaments. And once again, that means teams coming from over the hill. So I think that's great news. They were looking for some additional video content. I'm going to have Brad Horn, our videographer, over at the site, I think in the next couple of days, shooting some new videos so they can start marketing the event for us. So great news. Now Kyle's aware of it.
That's 2018, next year, start?
No, they want to start this year. Yeah, they're ready. They signed with AAU 2 weeks ago, and they're ready to move forward. So I think the youth basketball program, their Saturday use is wrapping up this weekend, and so we're ready. We're ready now. Yeah, great.
Hello. It's been busy, and I'll run through a couple of things we've been doing. So the first of the month was the pre-budget session of the Department of Tourism and Cultural Affairs, and you know, the NAC, of course, has funded dozens and dozens of projects for organizations and artists here in Carson City, and I thought it was a good effort on our part as the capital to show up. As you can see, when those seats are filled and when they're not filled makes a difference in the meeting, and we were able to get about a dozen people there. Claudia Vecchio reached out and said thank you, and sitting there I was able to sit back and sort of be proud that we've actually developed relationships with every division in there. You know, we have projects cooking with everyone there. On the 3rd, we opened up our Great Basin Native Artist reception at the Visitors Bureau. You know, the Visitors Bureau is not only the first step for you go to for information, but you know, it's now a hub for contemporary arts and culture, which I'm proud to say. And the attendance was great. It's just shy of 50 people. Artwork sold. The artists were happy. A week later, the city manager asked us, you know, Joel touched upon it, to do a little pop-up gallery at the Old Tahoe Brewery. We had music there, artwork there, great food, decor, AV. I think it was a nice, welcoming event. And then, of course, tomorrow we're also plugging the GBNA show in coordination with First Nations Focus. They dropped off a couple of inserts that they're putting in the Nevada Appeal. I think the circulation is about 25,000 copies, and in their first issue they cover our show. Going forward, we're going to be providing content and photography for their monthly periodical of our show and of these artists, not only to raise the bar for their magazine, but also to promote our purposes. It's a really good working relationship. And of course, that show that we have is also sponsored by the Department of Tourism and Cultural Affairs. I left a little business card at everyone's desk, and there's some at the front door, and that is from our Fashion Fridays in February. Of course, the 2nd and the 10th were the first 2 movies of Dior and I and Bill Cunningham. The last movie is this Friday. Information about that can be found on our website. All 150 possible seats were either bought or were taken by museum members. The museum members got the ticket for free. It was sold out. The Nevada State Museum had about 10 new members join. I think about $35 a piece, so that's $350. Went in their pocket. Adele's was a gracious sponsor, and as of today, they told me that 40 patrons had been served using their coupon. So at $25 a head, that's $1,000. But we had 150 people walk through the museum doors in 4.5 hours, which helps the museum in their with the numbers that they have to come up with. Really happy with this exchange. You know, I think this working relationship is going to really grow. I've always wanted the museum to sort of be the anchor of our art walk. I mentioned that to Peter Barton, and he has graciously allowed the permanent display of Native American artifacts on the north side of the museum that faces our building to open the doors for our next art walk. So that's for free. And I think that not only benefits, you know, visitors and people who live here, but I think it also benefits the our Native American culture here in Carson City as well, so that their history is told for free. Last week, Joel and I stopped by the WNC and spoke to their Latino cohort. You know, it's an integral part to any community, not just a creative one, to involve students and youth into municipal structures, not only how they work, but what they offer. And so we had the opportunity to sort of introduce ourselves, what we do. By a show of hands, I asked who there of the just shy of 20 students had been to the State Museum, and none of them raised their hand. Again, working with Peter Barton, he has waived a field trip for these students to go and check out the museum. I happened to pass out a couple of free tickets to the movie, and I was happy to see these students show up last Friday, too. So, you know, reaching out to the Native American community, reaching out to the Hispanic community, reaching out to the youth, those are three important things for me to do here, and I'm happy to see a little progress on all those fronts. The other day, I had a sit-down meeting with the Nevada State Parade and the Nevada Arts Council. They hadn't really formally met each other, and in helping just to develop a creative and festive float environment for the Nevada State Parade, I wanted to introduce them to the NAC and see if there were any grants that I could help write to elevate their game. From what I'm told, that back in the day, it used to be quite a spectacle, and I'm hoping to, with the Nevada Day Parade, write a grant for up to $6,500. A couple of ideas that we had on the table were to actually pair local artists with local organizations that are in the parade, but not necessarily have an artistic element to their float itself. So that would benefit, you know, the business and artists. Susan Boskoff also mentioned reaching out to other local agencies and offering jackpot grants to artists to come up with floats to come to our parade. So there's a lot of stuff on the table, and I'm pretty happy to be working with the NAC again on that. Let's see. March 2nd, which I believe is a Thursday, is going to be a new art walk. And it's going to I'm putting together a theme for the art walk. I think having themes going forward would be interesting in that it would bring new venues. People aren't getting tired of the same old thing, and it might give us the opportunity to actually go into small businesses or public buildings that are not necessarily seen as artistic venues, and really showing a different side of what might be offered. The theme for this upcoming one is called Then and Now. And a couple of the items that I'm juggling to place is an antique roadshow type of presentation by a local antique dealer to give him an opportunity to speak about something on the wall, the history and the story behind it, something that he likes. We're going to be going to an 1879 mansion and talking to the contemporary artist that lives there. Again, we're going to the Native American section at the State Museum, and then crossing the parking lot into our contemporary show. The art walk is going to end up at the Nevada Arts Council, where their artist is going to have a reception and an artist talk for this art walk, which is kind of a special thing because the NAC hasn't done that before, and the artist is pretty stoked on having a good attendance and a turnout. And of course, when people go on art walks, it's a little nicer than just to walk in and see something on the wall and walk out. To actually meet the person and ask them some questions about why they're doing what they do and how they do it is also a fun thing to do. Kyle and I have been putting our heads together with an NAC again and the Adams Hub on developing a workshop to enable artists, craftspeople, performing artists, literary artists to effectively market their art, build their brand, become financially successful. When we're going to drop this on the calendar is still in discussion, but I think just in speaking with the local artists, it seems like something that's going to be an amazing pilot program. I think, if all of us can use our resources to sort of help the community and those artists with that first step, I think that's really going to have a long-term lasting effect on what this community can produce. And of course, it's going to be, we're bringing in guest speakers. The final everyone who signs up for this class will be given the opportunity to have a group show there at the Adams Hub in that back room. And of course, we're going to land that on a wine walk. So it'll give people, if they've never had a group show before, it'll give them a taste of that. Did I mention that Carson City Arts Instagram now has over 200 followers? Hoo-hoo. And I will say only a very small portion are from New York. Mostly here in Nevada and the West Coast. Let's see. For the future, again, we're meeting with Danny Rotter this week on walking down the sidewalk to figure out the best locations for these bike racks. I think we've had several discussions with Laura Rader and Muscle Power, and I think we have a clear path ahead of us. Now it's just determining where we're going to decorate the city with these great bike racks. One thing I want to do is just publicly remind everyone that the special event funding request form is available online. It's 3 pages. This is part of that 40% of the RACC money that we get to fund arts and cultural events. I spoke to Lee Plemmel, and all the while these applications don't necessarily have an arts and non-arts box, Lee and I are going to sit down and look at each one and attribute them to the proper stack. The due date for these are April 15, 2007. It's for fiscal year 17-18. And I think that's about it. Are there any questions on any of the? Oh, anyhow, so that card I neglected to mention. Though that is all of our paparazzi pics. So if you go to that website and type in the password fashion, you'll see all the people who showed up at these film festivals, and people are really dressing up. It's a great pleasure to see the smiles on so many people's faces. It's a hit. It's a hit, and I think you'll see it in the faces. There's a diversity, and it'll put a smile on your face for certain. Anything? No? Okay, thank you.
Good job, both of you.
Can I add one more thing that I just was remembering? So I'm still in shell shock from traveling of last week, and this is a nice little lull here, but next week, starting on Sunday the 19th and going all the way to the 25th, is the Go West Travel and Trade Show that's centered out of Reno. It's about 500 or 600 tour operators from around the country and the world that are coming to Northern Nevada to see what our product is. So starting on Sunday the 19th, going all the way until the 25th, we're getting, over the course of that week, probably around 200 or more tour operators to come down to Carson City. So I'm going to be running them around to all the museums, the hot springs, the galleries, the restaurants, things like that. So if you see a large group with me running around frantic downtown, just wave and say hi. And those are all tour operators, and we want them to have a good time so that they book their clients in Carson City.
Next, you have future agenda items. As I mentioned earlier, the interlocal agreement will come back to you in addition to the first draft of the strategic plan. I made a note to myself that the quicker I can get through the numbers in next month's meeting, the sooner I can get these guys, because they're killing it. They're doing a great job. And once again, I think we've only missed you for, what, 3 weeks now, less than 3 weeks from our last meeting. You can see how busy things are even in the shoulder season, so.
Capitalize that note.
What, yeah.
Just joking.
As far as any future agenda items from the board, anything you want to see back? Okay.
I think we talked way back about Boys and Girls Club, I'm not Boys and Girls Club, but Parks and Rec, coming up and talking about their, what they're doing with the MAC and how our partnership and how that's going to work. I think that would be a good, maybe it's just a discussion on how our partnership is working with that.
Yeah, I think that would be, and maybe even having Boys and Girls Club at the same meeting, because we're all partners in collaboration in those events. But I can say that one of the first groups that is continuing to work on making sure that interlocal agreement addresses all of our needs and theirs is Parks and Rec with the MAC. So I'm glad to see that being a big part of that interlocal agreement moving forward. So without that, upcoming meetings, once again, we will be back here as the CCVB Board of Directors on the 13th of March at 4 o'clock. That'll be followed up the same evening by the Cultural Commission meeting at 5:30. Okay.
All right, thanks, everyone. Very good reports. Really appreciate that. Good work. All right, public comment? No, seeing none. No one joined us since we've been going here. Any more board comments or announcements?
I just have one. The Concert Under the Stars this year is being nudged out of the nest from Adele's and moving to the BAC because we need a larger venue. And with that said, the date is July 12th, and once the act is inked, which is very close, I'll announce that at the next meeting.
Great, we look forward to that. Thanks, Karen. All right, any other board announcements or comments? If not, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.